G'day everyone, my name's Zach. I love rugby. Welcome back to Hakatime Rugby. Okay, this is episode number 2 in our Lions series, building up to the Lions tour in 2021. And I'm joined by two very special guests, Mr. Modern Bok Rugby and Mr. Unbiased Rugby. How are we doing, gentlemen?
No, thanks for having us. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Zach.
No problem. I sometimes get criticised for being biased, so I thought if I have two South Africans on the show, I can't be called biased, surely.
Yeah, it definitely does work out. The math works out.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, guys. So the format of the video and what we'll be covering today. So as I said, this is episode number 2 and the build up towards the Lions series. But really what I want to look at, and it's really on the back of that video that I put together on my thoughts on how to beat the Springboks. Some of the key points that I identified there. So we know that some of the strengths of the Springboks is the rush defence. We know that tactical kicking play, the kick to space, obviously contest under the high ball and put pressure on defence to try and force those turnovers. That's a real strength of the Springboks. Set piece, we know all about that. It's one of the great strengths of this team. And then also we'll look about the bench and the bench structure. I mean, it seems like that was probably quite player specific, just due to the resources, I guess, that Rassie had available to him. It sort of lent itself towards playing a 6-man bench, but also fit in well with the strategy. But if we can start to take a look at that and what we think would be the right structure there for the Lions, and then I think what we'll start doing is get into some selections, key roles, what we think those key roles are, and then into some selections. But before we kick things off, guys, obviously the tour schedule has been announced. So what were your initial thoughts on that?
I was quite impressed. I'm quite happy as living in Gauteng that 3 of the games are going to be right here in my neighborhood. So I was quite impressed with that. I'm really happy that they're bringing in Soccer City to play more of these games, really to get the attendance up. So I think the figures we can, 80,000 plus people in a stadium cheering on the first game is going to be quite a sight to see, I think.
What a way to kick it off as well.
Yeah, I saw the schedule yesterday. I think I'll probably should be able to go see the first and I think it's the second last game is the one Cape Town Stadium, which is also, it's a magnificent stadium, Cape Town Stadium. It's really nice. But it'd be magical to be at F&B Stadium to actually go watch it there with 80,000 fans.
Yeah.
Well, surely there's no better way to kick that off. It's that would be quite incredible.
No, for sure. And I mean, even with the nice the tour games, and I'm glad that they've also brought Nelspruit in for the Springbok A team. I think that'll be really nice to bring them in. That is also a beautiful Mbombela Stadium up there. That's where my family's from. So I'm definitely going to be traveling up there to see that game. That's going to be quite exciting. So I think it's nice that they've included huge parts of the city. Every major city is getting a match, I think. So that's good to see.
Excellent. Okay, to those who are viewing, please feel free to jump into the comments. We'll jump into some of the questions as they come through, and feel free to discuss any of the talking points that we're covering off. So let's get into point number 1. How do you beat the rush defense? Now, what I noticed looking at a few of the games is that the rush, obviously it came in waves, but certainly there was a targeted effort at first receiver, and that was predominantly Peter Steff du Toit, but whoever's really filling that defensive role tended to rush out. And then also into that link play. And by link play, I mean, when you get the 15 trailing around or the 12 trailing around looking to pass that final pass out, it was always tempted to be someone like Lukanyuam or even Mapimpi coming off the wings to try and stop the play at that point. So that seemed to be a trend in the defensive structure. So what do you guys think? What are some strategies you think the Lions could employ to try and get over the top of that? And let's start with Mr. Unbiased Rugby.
Yeah, I think looking at South Africa's rush defence, I think it's a little bit different. For me, it's more you've got the outside players coming in as opposed to there's a full rush. So it's almost like a banana. I always try to equate it as a banana. So you've got, like you said, Peter Steff du Toit taking first receiver. You've normally got Faf hassling the 9. Peter Steff taking first receiver. Then you've got Lukanya Arm or Mapimpi coming in, taking on the centre. So not second five, but the actual centre. So it's just a little bit of a variation on the rush defence. High risk, super high risk, but it obviously has a high reward factor because obviously you can cause the error, get the turnover and stuff like that. For me, I think there's 3 ways to probably beat the rush defence. One, for me, is just survive it. Literally, you can't, no team, there is no team in the world that can play 80-minute rush defence. It's physically impossible. I think 40 minutes is probably the max, 45 minutes, and then the game starts opening up. And I think maybe if you can be one try behind, or you've just limited the kind of score, then you've survived it, and then you can start playing. It's one way. The other way, it's obviously the chips kicks over the. The next way is probably playing a little bit deeper, which is one way of doing it. My problem is you're going backwards. You're not really going forward, so you've actually got to work a lot harder to go forward.
I've seen, teams that play from depth can sometimes be caught significantly behind the momentum line, and just it just stifles your attack completely.
You think 3 breakdowns, you're playing in defence, and you're not getting over the gain line. You're almost going 20 to 30 meters back. So, essentially, you're going to kick again, you're going to chip, and you're going to be back in this exactly the same spot, but probably the opposition's got the ball. So it's for me. I think it's quite risky playing a lot deeper. You've got to really have a really good. Maybe the All Blacks could when they start to play a little bit deeper, I think they can do it. I think they've got the attack structures and the actual physical skill to be able to do it. I don't think the Lions have that kind of skill to be able to beat the rush defence. The other way is obviously, for me, my favourite way is to play up the middle. So literally keep all the forwards together, just keep pick and drive, like literally just keep on going. Play the South Africans the way the South Africans want to play. And for me, I honestly believe a South African team that's going backwards is never going to win the game. That's my personal opinion. I think they rely heavily on their forwards, and if their forwards are going backwards, I think you've negated a really big weapon that the Springboks have. So for me, those are the 3. Yes, obviously there's the traditional cross-field kicks. There's quite a lot that can be done, but for me, my favourite way is to obviously play up the middle.
Awesome. So obviously, I fully agree with you, Unbiased Rugby. I think those are definitely your number 1 ways to attack this setup, and probably the only ways to get around it. One thing that obviously is, and as you said, we were talking later about the subs, and that is, unfortunately, where South Africa does have a downside is they cannot play this for the full time. So, and they do not have the bench to replace. So you have to have an exceptionally fit set of players. So if you can increase the pace in your first 40 minutes, I think that's going to be key for a lot of this. It's a case of keeping the game speed going high. Don't let South Africa slow down the game, and I think then you can overwhelm that rush defense. But what South Africa has done very well is, with the quality of the lineout they've got, they've made teams avoid the cross kicks and the kicking over the teams, as they don't want to go out. They want to avoid getting out, which has been another arsenal in the way that they've forced teams into playing against them head on head. But I think that if teams can get some confidence in their lineout to then utilize the kicks more, that's going to be essential. For example, Ford, I think, would have been key for England in the World Cup final to take them on in that position, being able to kick over the team, kick cross kicks, and turn the defense. Because a lot of the time South Africa tends to, once they've been kicked, you catch them off guard once or twice, the rush defense slows down substantially, and that's where you want to get them. New Zealand showed it in the first game of the World Cup, and as the British and Irish Lions, they're going to be looking at that game in Auckland this year already, seeing how does New Zealand tackle this on. Because you're right, they're probably the one team that have the pace and the ability to keep the ball going long enough to really tire out the team. And the 6-2 split hurts the rush defense in that setup there.
Yep. And I think what's interesting is, and just starting to think about some of those positions that'll be key in trying to beat the rush defense. But one thing I noticed from Faf in particular, when I look at how they approach defensive structure, he's literally in no rush. He'll sit there and wait for for the pods to set, and that's another strategy. Is you take away the option of I guess when that first receiver is set and rushing out the line, pass it into a forward pod, and then look to play in behind them. there as another good option. So when I look at those positions that are critical, obviously a 10 who can kick, pass, and run is so vital. And I think that's probably one of the failings of George Ford in that final. And it's probably strategic direction from Eddie Jones, but I would have liked to see him put all of those options on the table and test the defence from time to time himself, or obviously get the ball out wide and kick the ball into the back arm. But if you have those players with that kind of variety, I think that goes a long way to defending, to beating a rush defence. The other thing that I like to see is ball playing from 9, right?
Yeah.
Players in motion and 9 choosing whether he goes short, whether he goes long, or whether he goes behind. Because again, pressure on the rush defence. So a few good options there. I think in terms of positions, though, I do think those 2 positions in particular and their ability to have variety in the game is critical.
Exactly. I'd like to add also the usefulness of the outside centre when it comes to, as that banana defence cuts off and gets in there. I think he's essential to be able to bring in the wing outside of that banana, because we've often seen it, and it was where one of the biggest weekends South Africa had originally when they started this is catching players like Pimpy or Colby coming in the defence. If you can catch over them and have the pace and the accuracy of your passes to get over them, I think that is a very, very powerful tactic to bring in.
Yeah, I also think having somebody like a Tuolungi targeting Lukhanya arm, I think arm is pretty essential to the defensive structure, especially the defensive reads. And he's very, very good over the ball. I think if you've got some huge, big 110-kilogram brute hitting him at that channel or something like that, then literally it might negate that thing. But obviously, we're trying to talk about rush defense at the moment, not attacking the thing. But I'd say a big 13 taking on Lukhanya arm is probably the way to go.
Yep. Okay, thanks, guys. Let's move on to the next one. So, the tactical kicking play. Now, in my video, I described it as low risk, high reward play, which is kick into space, and it was predominantly either box kicking from Faf or kicking directly from 10 or 15 if Willie LaRue's up in the line, and then putting pressure on that high ball and backing your defence if the attack does get set and attacks, backing your defence to put pressure on and try to force errors. So let's start with you, Mr. Monenbach. What do you think in terms of positions or approach to try and defend against that?
So obviously, this is something that I think is actually controversial in South Africa. As much as the tactical play is probably one of the key points that brought South Africa the victory in the World Cup, unfortunately, it tends to force us. It forces us into this defensive style, and actually is something that a lot of teams can actually use to their advantage. In my opinion, the tactical play, how you effectively attack it is you have strong players on the high ball to at least be able to set up the first play off there. After that, if you can utilize that to speed up and then you disorientate the defense, South Africa has a tendency about 1 or 2 phases where it's a little bit slow to get into position for the rush. If you can attack off of those moments and not let them recover, especially with speed, having another player send off the ball and have your line up in time, that's where it's going to be key for a team like this. South Africa tends to have a little bit of a slow rush up as they're trying to get their positions and everything right, and you need to focus on this. And if you can use this, increase your pace here, it can be deadly for the South African defense. And often these kicks happen. South Africa normally only ever kicks if they're in their half line. So definitely, as soon as you're getting a kick where you're landing on South Africa's halfway line and rushing at them, odds are you can gain quite a couple of meters and push them right back. And this could definitely pin South Africa back in the half. You just got to be on song every time. Yeah.
Sorry, my mic was muted there. That's a big one there, that tactical kicking. Obviously, you need somebody really good under the high ball. I think Liam Williams is probably one of the best players currently playing under the high ball. So you need someone that really can handle that backfield. Yes, if it was a couple of years ago, maybe I would have said a Carney White may have been a lot better. But I just don't think he has the kind of speed anymore that Liam Williams has. I think for me, he's absolutely key for the back. Tactical kicking, I don't know. It's just the Springboks tend to play a lot of 9. Historically, the best Springbok sides in the world have ever won World Cups. They've always had strong 9s. It's part of South Africa's DNA. It's from US van der West days into I can't remember the guy in 2007, also an amazing Bulls player. But I'll remember it again.
Free to prayer.
Yeah, free to prayer. But so we've always had world-class nines that are, I mean, they're in the top 5 in the world at that given time. So I think a lot of kicks come off 9. I think Pollard's pretty good at tactical kicking, but it depends how you want to play it, because I know some teams play with 2 in the backfield, and then but I know I like the way the New Zealanders play, where they actually have all 3, but they just keep moving up and down depending on the way that it is. But obviously we're trying to defend against it. I'd say that kind of defense is probably the best. Then I don't see South Africa grubbing that often. I see obviously Damon Delenda doing it every now and again, but it's not really part of the arsenal. It's more kick for the corners, box kick for either territory or getting some kind of ascendancy. But yeah, I'd say you need some really good people under the hub. You have to contest for those balls, and you have to win them. Because the second you win that ball, it's a free ball.
Yep.
The opposition, they're just giving you a free run of the field. The defense is broken. I think for me, I think Liam Williams is key.
Yeah.
A player that I also, talking about Liam Williams, a player that I also want to highlight that I think is really great, and he showed it in the New Zealand game against England, was Watson. Anthony Watson really did tactically position himself very well for a bunch of kicks get fielded by Richie Mwanga, and that kind of position. And he, as you said there in the end there, attacked off it very quickly, and he was key in that. So he also could be a real thorn in South Africa's side when it comes to the Irish tour, if he's selected, obviously, as I think he is very, very good at reading a tactical kick and able to attack from it quite comfortably.
Yep. No, I know it's an obvious thing to say these players need to be good under the high ball, but to me, that's one of the critical success and also selection criteria is we can have players that can score tries, and we can have players that can beat defenders, but if you're no good under the high ball, to me, it opens up all sorts of opportunities for the Springboks. So, I'd almost prioritise that over other skill sets for wingers when I'm making a selection there. Liam Williams, I 100% agree with you. I do think under the high ball he's one of the better of the fullbacks that I've seen. And then if we look at some of the wingers, I mean, Johnny May tends to be pretty good under the high ball. Watson obviously as well. But to me, that will be one of the key selection criteria, more so than number of tries scored, more so than ability to beat defenders. That's going to be crucial.
No, exactly right. I think that's you've put the nail on the head there. It's about being able to not only handle the high ball, but under heavy pressure, but also being able to actually step up and then take whatever impact you're getting when you do. Because a lot of the time, South Africa is able to smother that ball so it doesn't come out quickly enough. So it's going to be also being able to the skills of being able to place the ball and make sure that you're able to feed the ball as quick as possible to the team again are going to be key features for the player going forward.
Yep.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, so just one more point. I think you really need to look at rugby league to trying to get that kind of skill set, under the high ball. Regardless of what you think of Israel Folau, that's the yardstick you should be for under the high ball. That for me is where you need. That's your skill level where you need to be, especially against the Boks, against the All Blacks, against almost any side.
Yep, agree. Well, one opportunity there is that it's quite obvious when the kick is coming when the box kick is coming, so it gives defenses a good opportunity to set. And I agree with you what you said about the All Blacks, the way that they structure their defense with wingers coming backwards and forwards. If you have that, if you can get that tactic right, then you can set well to defend against the box kick. So, a few good options there. Let's move forward. How do you beat the set piece? One of the great strengths. I might kick things off on this one. So when I had a look at this one, my view is that there are certain areas in the game where you have to bite down on your mouth guard, and you have to compete. And what I didn't like about the final was the negative play England brought to try and avoid the line-out. Especially you think about the psychology of a World Cup final, right? And you're saying to one of your young guys, or a couple of your young guys in the line-out, you're saying to them, well, not sure if you can do it, so we're going to kick away. We're going to kick to the fullback and try and put pressure on there rather than back you to try and do the job. And I think whoever comes into this team must be ready to compete, whether that's 6 forwards on the bench or not. There's certain areas in rugby. I still think it's a game that's evolved, but it's still the same at the end of the day.
Yeah.
That areas like this, you must compete and you must go forward. So I had a bit of a controversial selection, I would say, but someone like Devon Turner for me, he didn't make the Irish rugby squad, but he's a huge man, right? So I wouldn't mind seeing someone like that, depending on how he goes, obviously. But someone like that coming into the lineup could be effective at line-out time. Obviously, experience there as well, but certainly you need players that can just bite down on the mouth guard and get a result there.
No, exactly. And I think that, as you said, that the negative play was probably one of the biggest things that took out players like Mario Itoje in a final when you need him so much. I mean, he was essential for the performance of that New Zealand team. And not only Itoje, but I mean, James Ryan, all of it, like those kind of things are always so important. So bringing that out and then effectively cutting them off at the knees when it comes to how they're going to attack really affects a player's confidence, and I think affects the other parts of their game. And I feel as much as the line out is a dominant feature for South Africa, I think we had a very consistent line out in keeping our own ball, but also we didn't steal a lot of ball. So I don't think that should be something that a team should avoid. I think that they can target there and compete quite comfortably with. And then if you can set your maul fine, it's a great set piece for any team to utilize. The scrums, on the other hand, I think your focus is going to be the first 30 minutes to try and hit as hard as possible to not let South Africa gain confidence, because it's always a little bit of like the first 20, 30 minutes, South Africa has a little bit of it's fair game competition. But after that, it starts to peel off, and then South Africa start to dominate and really gain penalties from it. So you need to make sure from minute one, you are pushing South Africa to avoid the scrum also, and then I think you can have somewhere where you can compete in that position.
Yeah, who's the Irish guys that chat? I normally chat to them. I always forget. Sorry, it's Saturday.
It's Overlap Rugby.
Yeah, so they call the South African pack the Rolls Royce pack and the Rolls Royce forwards, because essentially it's not the flashiest of cars out there, but it's reliable, it's strong, it's going to get you from A to B. So, and I thought that was quite a really good analogy, and I agree with Mario Itoje. Taking him out of the game, Mario Itoje is probably of the top 5 forwards in the world. He's on that list, without a doubt. And I'm talking Peter Steff, Mario Itoje, Ardie Savea, James Ryan, Brodie Retallick. These are the best forwards currently playing on the planet. And not letting him compete at the line-out is just, I just don't think it's really, because he is really good. You watch him in the Premiership and you watch him playing for Saracens. The guy's not an idiot, and he knows how to compete at the line-out. And I think the only way to compete against the set piece is to actually bloody compete. The scrum is, scrum is not always about penalties, and it's not always about, scrum's a special place in the universe. Lots of things happen in the scrum, and sometimes it's about inches. And if a player's just going back if a scrum's going back by an inch, it just gives the whole team a lift. And that's the power of a scrum. And Proudfoot was saying, because I really do like Matthew Proudfoot, and he was saying the reason why you have scrums is you end up having 15 players all in the same space, and then the rest of the field is open for the backs, and that's why they're there. The set piece is to bring in as many players as possible, so to make holes, and I like that. My biggest issue that I see at the moment, if I look at, I think. Tide Furlong is the best tight head in the world by a country mile. I think Cian Healy is probably one of the best loose heads. Jamie George, for me, is probably one of the best number 2s playing. If I look at the South African pack, there's no player that really stands out as the best in the world. But on average, I think they're the best. I mean, if you took the sum of their parts, they're the best. But individually on the Lions, I think they'd have a lot of players that would be a lot better. But you have to compete. You literally have to compete. The nice thing about South Africa now we're starting to make mauls, not just from lineouts. We're just making it in the middle of the field. So, and once the maul gets going, it's tough to stop, especially in the middle of the field, because you can't. There's no immediate sack. So you've actually got to compete. You've got to stop the ball. You've got to swim through, which I think Mario Itoje is very good at. But yeah, I agree with you 100%, Zach. The only way to beat it is to actually compete. And just literally throw the kitchen sink at it, and that's what you have to do.
Yeah, I think that midfield maul, it says a lot about the confidence of the team as well.
Yeah.
To say, you know what, we're setting up right here, and we're just going to play to our strengths, try and stop us. It's that mentality, and I just think the last thing you want is your top players, Maro Toji included, to be down on any sort of confidence. You really want to build these guys up and say, we're competing, let's go.
Yes, exactly. It's all about confidence. And as we were saying, you said the Rolls-Royce pack and all that. I think that's quite interesting. And where the Virgin Irish Lions have the beauty of the fact that they've got probably some of the best locks coming from England side. They've got some of the best forward front row pack coming from Ireland. And Wales also got an exceptional back row. They do have, in my opinion, they will be able to compete comfortably in those positions with the fact that they've got now some of the best players in every one of the positions coming together into a single team. And that's going to be where I'm very fascinated for this tournament, because yes, as single parts, they might have a hard time competing with the overall pack from South Africa, but together there is a much higher chance that they'll be able to face hard.
Yeah, I think there is a part of this when I look at the final selections that I would come up with for the Lions. Then I'd be looking at physicality as a real tool as well. So I just think these things all play into each other. Scrum, line out, maul, but also physicality and at the breakdown, physicality and defense. They're all parts that sort of build into the same, I guess, package. So if you've got a team that is dominant physically in the in general play, it tends to play out south out as well in set piece time. So I think that's part of the selections that I would look for as well. Guys that can really be physical and really have a go there at all areas. Cool. Anything else to add on that one, gentlemen?
No, exactly that. That's a key focus.
It's
I think.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sure.
No, bro. I think the last thing I'd just like to add there with this is, as you're talking about confidence and that kind of stuff, is some in South Africa, I think, did very well with players like Skulk Brits coming in. That it was not only in the forward pack is it about the confidence and all that, but it's also about brotherhood. And I think that's something South Africa has built very strongly. And that's going to be very tough for a team like the British Irish Lions. They only really have 6 days before the final in the English Premier League games to come together and really compete. Yes, the Pro 14 has moved forward, their final forward to help them, but still, that's going to be tough to build a brotherhood with a couple of games beforehand to actually be able to build. And I'm wondering if that could be their biggest weakness.
Yeah, that could be interesting. I mean, I've seen documentaries in the past in the build-up to Lions series, and I know the Lions series means a lot to these players. So I would expect them to come, and I would expect them to really try and I think Warren Gatland's pretty good at that side of things as well. He's building that camaraderie within the team. So I agree with you. It's certainly going to be a challenge for them at short notice, but I think given the history and the legacy of the Lions, I'm pretty sure they'll be up for it.
Yeah. I think that's why they play the 5 games beforehand, before they actually do, I think 4 or 5 games beforehand, obviously to try and get that gelling. But maybe the quickest way to obviously start getting them to gel is to obviously rather pick partners. So rather, instead of having a lot pairing, like Brodie Retallick's good and Sam Whitelock are good, but together they're just incredible. So maybe keeping your 2 props the same, keeping your 2 locks from the same country. Maybe your loose tray you can play around a little bit, but maybe you need to start looking at pairings, because that obviously you've already got that brotherhood. You've already got, especially if you think if you have your hooker and the 2 locks from the same country, means it's sorted out not only your lock position but sorted out your line out. So there's a lot of understanding straight away by just keeping like with like, for want of a better word.
Great point. Okay, let's move on to the next one. So we saw the success of the 6-man bench, right? And that was quite specific, both to a strategy that Rassie was looking to implement, but also I think to the tournament structure at the Rugby World Cup. Obviously, it has benefits for player management. Obviously, it has benefits for our execution against a very specific strategy. Looking forward, and we're a long way out, how do you think this will evolve for the Springboks? Will they continue with the 6-man bench, or was it player specific for this tournament? And what would you recommend for the Lions? Who wants to kick this one off?
Okay. Sorry. I'll start on this one. I think next time we may try have a bit of a format. We know who talks first. But I don't think the 6-2 bench is it's not going to be. I think it's only going to be for the really big tournaments where there's a lot of attrition. I think the World Cup lent itself to having a 6-2 split. A lot of teams were going for mobile props, very very mobile back three. So very few teams were really focusing on really high physicality. They were talking more open, expansive. You want players that all over the field that have that skill set across the field. And maybe Rusty saw that as an opportunity to actually come in and say, okay, everyone else is going loose and wild. Let's go tight and strong, whatever. So I don't see it. I don't see it going forward. I think they're going to go back to the 5-3 split, and maybe for the Lions, maybe one or two of the games, maybe the first game they might go 6-2. But I still think 5-3 is going to. The world's going to come back to normal. The rugby universe is going to say, okay, you've had enough, time to go back to 5-3. But I just don't see. I see that's going to happen. It depends how the Lions come. If we see them playing a lot more physical, then maybe we'll go for a 6-2 split. But I just think there's such amazing backs in South Africa. There's such amazing talent out there that game changers. Damien Willemses, the Curran Bosches. Then you watch that game when Curran Bosch played at the Barbarians. It was phenomenal. The guy's got an absolutely great boot. So there's these great players that when the game opens up, they're there, they're available. So I think we're going to go back to a 5-3 bench. That's my personal opinion, though.
Yeah, just one question for you on what you mentioned there. It did seem very player specific, as in there were almost 6 guys that you couldn't deny a spot in a World Cup 23. So do you think those the quality of that level player will be available for a 6-man bench?
Ooh, yeah, that's a big question. Obviously, we've lost 2 players already to retirement. Obviously, Beast, and who I still think is world class. But I have a feeling he's going to be back. That's just me.
The Floyd Mayweather of rugby.
The number 7, Francois Lowe, obviously world class player. Not as much as he used to be, but he brought something really special, especially at that closing ends of the game. So we don't have those kind of players available.
And Brits,
and Schalk Brits is not available, but I don't think Schalk Brits was there for the rugby. I think he was there for something completely different. I think that's exactly the same. That's why I think Alwyn Jones should be the captain, the tour captain, because he'll bring that mongrel, that listen, guys, you fight for me to the death. That's the kind of the attitude that he has. And I think that's going to be super important to especially to the backroom. He may not play every single game. I don't think he'd be the captain for the day, but I think that's super important. I still think there's some great players coming through in South Africa for a 6-2 split. Lisa Gaboka, Oxen Chair, who I think is a real up-and-coming prop if he just puts on about 5 kilograms. I think we can, but I still think we're going to go back to a 5-3 because I do think there are the players that to come from the backfield.
What do you think?
I think also going to go to 5-3. I just think that it'll be the public and that also pushing for it. Super Rugby teams still focus on it unless there's a massive change in the way the teams perform this year. I think the biggest thing is we're avoiding the backs, and especially with a rush defense like we're trying to push it and the teams competing more and more on it, we need to be able to give some subs on our backs and actually be able to give them some time to breathe and really be able to open up play, especially in that second half. Obviously, that means that we need to have, it's going to become so important to pick the right 5 players to keep the dominance in the forwards. And that's where it's going to be very interesting. I'd like to see a bunch of really, really stunning players come in that haven't been there, as you said, Auction Chair, Akker, all of those. So there's going to be a lot of really good options for them. And the 5-3 split is definitely going to be useful in that. And I don't know if the players are there to be able to do a 6-2 again, especially considering that it's not only the 6 props that caused it, but the 2 on the back line when it came to the players in the back line, I think were able to sustain a game. I don't know if that's going to be able to go on for much longer.
Yeah, I agree. I think Rassie found a great loophole in time for the Rugby World Cup. Let's all get back to normal.
Yeah, we'll see if he does use it and it works well. The question is, do other teams start following on? I mean, that's the thing. That's going to pretty much be 2020. If he continues in the Tri Nations or the Rugby Championship, in 2020, do other teams in the Northern Hemisphere Six Nations start trying it, or do we all just let South Africa continue it if it still continues to work?
Yeah, this is the thing, is you have to have that quality level of players to be able to do it. I mean, when you look at that forward pack, that overall squad makeup for South Africa, the quality of the players was there to execute on a 6-2 structure. I'm not sure. Well, the Lions will certainly have that level of quality.
Yes.
I mean, when you look through the names that they've got available, it's certainly there. Just the question will be, does it fit within the strategy that Gatland wants to play?
Yeah.
And I think traditionally he sort of leans more towards a 5-3. So
fair enough.
Cool. Let's move on to selections. Okay, we've talked about different ways to beat some of the traditional strengths of the Springboks. So, and obviously, I guess those positions, it starts to become clear what you really need in terms of each of those positions. So let's go around. I think we'll just choose a few players each that I think we're either, you would at this point in time put into a line squad, or you see as critical positions with certain players that can fill. So let's kick things off with you, Modern.
So some of the key players I'd like to bring, I've already mentioned one with Anthony Watson. I think he's going to be essential for the high ball attack. Key for that attack, and I really want to see him play there. I'm going to be a little unbiased and also go for another English player being I think we should give Ford another chance. I don't think he was used properly. I think he has a lot more in him. I know Farrell is probably the more consistent choice, but I think Ford is tactically kicking. I think he's a stronger player, and we're something that is essential for them. And then in the front, I definitely go with Marco Vunipola, just because I think he's well. No, actually, let me change that up. I realize now I've gone for very English, so I'm going to change that up to rather on the side of Thad Furlong. I think Furlong is probably the best a prop in the world right now, and that'll be great to see. And I mean, the choices they have in those positions showcases how much of a challenge this will be for South Africa. But my choices there, effectively just trying to target the main problems. The scrum, obviously, a real issue that you have to counteract when you're facing South Africa, and the rush defense, both Ford and Watson, really I think will be useful and strong to be able to counter and push over that rush defense and cause the rush defense to think twice when they play.
Yep. Mr. Unbiased, what do you think? What are some of those key players, key positions?
I'd say for me, obviously, apart from the traditional spine, so obviously 2, 8, 9, 10, 15, I'd say I'd probably say we probably need a really good outside centre and probably a really, really good tight head prop. That's, for me, I think that's absolutely key. Especially going up against the level of props that the South Africa is going to be bringing from the Stephen Kitsoffs to ever. Tight head prop is absolutely key. And for a tour like that, you need at least 3. Yeah, they might even go for a 3 with a non-specialist who obviously plays both sides. But I'd say Tight Furlong. I've just forgotten the guy from England. Oh, damn.
It's OG.
No. Carl Sinclair.
George.
Sinclair, of course. Sinclair, yeah.
No, Sinclair. So I think both of them bring a different kind of skill set, and they're fairly interchangeable. For me, a key position is tight head prop. I just think if you're gonna go up against the box squad and every single scrum you're going to be going backwards, having penalties against you, you're in for a seriously hard day at the office. And I just think you need someone that's going to stabilize that. Because literally, if you just look at how scrum works, it's your key position. Even if you're not attacking or and you're just defending, it's a key position. It's absolutely key. And the nice thing that I like about Carl Sinclair and Tight Furlong is they're really good. They're attacking tight heads, so they're not just there for defense. Like an Owen Franks is, I still rate as one of the best tight heads that has ever played. He's not as much as Carl Sinclair, like a really get in your face kind of tight head. So yeah, for me that's a key position.
And then outside centre, who do you feel there? Who do you feel is going to be your big player there?
I think you need someone really big. I think you need someone. I think I think that you need someone that's going to get over that gain line. Obviously, hit hit that defensive wall really hard. Really make Dalende and Arm really question if they really want to tackle the guy the whole day. That's just how I see it.
An up-and-coming player I'd like to see, Owen Watkin from Ireland. I think he's going to be quite interesting in that position. I know he might not be as much of a physical beast, but I think he actually his role is increasing in the team. And considering we are still 2 years out, I think he still has a lot of time to mature into that position, and also could be a lot of fun to see in that.
Yeah, the other guy, 13, is the guy from Wales. I'm trying to get my list out, Chad.
Jonathan Davies.
Yeah. I think he's an absolutely special player on attack and defense. So I think he's a really, really good balance also. So for me, key is that 13.
No, exactly. I think those are your, and as we said earlier in the video, I mean, those are that's your position where if you can target and really be strong on that position, you can quite comfortably get around this banana rush defense that will be so important to utilize. From your side, Zach, where do you feel?
Okay, I'll extend a couple of points that were raised here. So I agree with you, tight head, so important. And back to the conversation around partnership. So I would like to see a good partnership in tight head prop and tight head lock. So I think if you're going to go tight furlong, I'd love to see someone like James Ryan there, right?
Yeah.
Right in behind him, great young player. It just seems to be like a really, really good fit. If I look outside centre, and I'll probably take this more from the perspective of the centre pairing and what I'm looking for. Certainly you need physicality in there. So Manu Tuolangi has to feature, but I also think what's critical, particularly to beat that banana-shaped rush defence, is a good decision maker out at 13. So I would almost favour Tuolangi in at 12 and Davies out at 13, just because it gives both those options of physicality, but also that link play out to the wing. And then one guy that I wouldn't be able to get into the team fast enough would be Liam Williams, for sure. We touched on it. We touched on his work under the high ball, but also as a roving fullback, he just seems to. He's got that. It's almost like a floating running style. He just kind of glides across the back. Good under the high ball. We know that, and really, really good in the counter attack. So those are probably three guys just building on the conversation that I'd look at.
No, exactly. The one last thing, obviously, one thing I would like to bring in also as a conversation when it comes to pairings, and that obviously a very trendy subject in this tournament, in this World Cup that just finished now, was the double playmaker setup. Do you think that the Lions will try and rebrand it, bring it back in, or do you think that it's a case of no, that didn't work and we're moving away from it again, or is it a case of we're going to have multiple players, as you said now, with outside centre being more tactically astute, that it's just a case of the general tactical astuteness of the team, of the backline, needs to be upped?
Oh, let me kick that one off. I mean, the easy answer is depends on the skill, I guess, the players that you've got at your disposal. So when I look at the All Blacks, obviously having Bowden Barrett there, he must make the team. Richie Mo'unga was a bit of a project. I think overall, probably, I'll say it was poor execution in the end. So the strategy might have been correct, but probably on the day the execution wasn't great. I think we'll go back to a more traditional model. I just think when I look at the makeup of the Lions, I think having a really, really good playmaker at 10, but then having, players that are, focused a lot in driving through the middle, Manu Tuolangi, as well as that link play on the outside. I think that feels like the right fit. I think looking at that back line of traditional 10, partly playmaking off a 9, but then also someone who can bash in the midfield, someone with great decision-making defensively and in attack on the outside, and then someone that roves in attack in 15. To me, that just feels like the right balance. I don't think you need to get any more clever than that. That's just my personal view.
Oh, no, for sure. I just think that obviously with a team, with the kind of player depth that they've got at their disposal, I thought they might try to. Because I've got a feeling, something tells me that when Mackenzie will be back and ready to go this season in the Rugby Championship, I think they'll go back to it. I think they'll have Mackenzie and Bowden Barrett being back into that pairing and try it again. So I've got a feeling more teams are going to try to really execute it, and it could be something that could catch a team like South Africa with a rather predictable style of play off guard, and that's where I think that could be a very useful thing for them. I mean, you've got Anscombe and them also being very important. We've left our players like Ringrose, also such an important player to bring forward. So, I think there's a lot of choices in their backline that could stifle South Africa's ability to hold off really, really quality defensive stuff.
What do you think about it?
I also think, I think we're forgetting about the back three. Or the back row, not the back three, the back row. I don't think the experiment with playing two open sides was very successful at all. I thought that Underhill and Curry played really well together, but I'm sorry to say you need a big bruising number 6, 110 kilogram, 2 meter tall, whatever, somebody who's just going to hit that line hard. You need that. You need the Liam Squires of the world. You need these players.
We call that position the piano mover in New Zealand.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
You just say, "There's a ruck, go hit."
Yeah.
That's what you need. And here's the ball, just rush through it. And that I really like the idea of playing CJ Stander at 6. I just think he's always had Peter Omani ahead of him, who I still think is a great player, but I think he's not on the best of form. So CJ Stander at 6, I do like that. I really do. I prefer Tom Curry to Sam Underhill, but that's just my personal opinion. I just think he brings something a little bit more special than Underhill, even though Underhill, I think everyone would give their front left teeth to have Underhill in their team. I just saw Gordon Clark say, I was actually talking about James Lowe, playing at obviously one of the wings, because I think he moved to Europe before the 5-year law. So I'm sure he's on the 3-year, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, but I think he should be qualifying next year. I think to play for Ireland. I think, yeah.
But another also a great option at Wales, from Wales, obviously, Filatau, I think he could also be really, really good. 110 beast. That guy will also be able to move the piano mover, as I'm going to be using that from now on.
I just think, look at the quality of players, especially at centre, Bandi Yaki, who also a special player at number 12. I like Tuolangi at 12 as well, especially you're going to end up, South Africa always play a big 12. If it's either Delende, if it's Hayden, there's always a big bruising number 12. So maybe you do need someone in that kind of position. And I think for me, the key is also Liam Williams. I just think it's absolutely key. And I think taking on the way that the All Blacks play the backfield like a pendulum, where all 3 players just keep moving. And there always seems to be 2 players in the backfield all the time. I just think is absolutely key. And so having Liam Williams there, my problem with who's the guy that scores all the time from England? Johnny May. My problem with Johnny May is he's a finisher. He's a great finisher. He's always, finishers, you've got to be at the right place at the right time. But he's not really this is going to come out really harsh. But he's not like a Cheslin Colby. He's not a creator.
Yeah.
He doesn't. He's just there at the right. It's like Mapimpi's at the right place at the right time, and that's a specialized skill. But I think they're going to have a lot more creative wingers. Wingers that can, like Lamar, who can probably play fullback and play wing. So I think that's going to be absolutely key as well.
Yep. I'll just jump in the back row because I think there's a couple of points here. So when I looked at the makeup of the Lions and looking at the performance of Billy Vunipola, I didn't even think he had a great World Cup at all. And I was looking at it thinking, well, I'd probably prefer someone like CJ Stander over Vunipola in 8. But the more I thought about it, I realized there's so much pressure on him to be that ball carrying forward that if you take some of the load off of him, all of a sudden it creates a lot of opportunities for a guy like that. If you start to look at it, a CJ Stander at 6 and a Billy Vunipola at 8, all of a sudden you've got 2 guys that can fill that role of being that first receiver, and running the ball hard at the line. Take some of that load off him. I think he can be a lot more successful.
Exactly. I think it's as you said, bringing in that number 6 or 7 to really be stronger in that running, that would really be essential for Vunipola. And also, the problem is not only is it the pressure, it also starts to become predictable for teams to know who to focus to defend against, and that's where I think you also need to also think about when you as a coach. You can have the star player, but it just becomes easier to know where you're going to go.
Yep. Any other selections we want to touch on, gentlemen?
I think those are my main focus ones. My big one is on-field captain. I think I personally think James Ryan walks on water. I think he's probably the best forward currently playing, bar none. That's my personal opinion, and that's good company from Brodie Retallick to Mario Itoje. I just think he's the absolute best, and I just think he has the right kind of temperament. He's got that kind of attitude where, listen, I'm not going to say a lot. I'm just going to do the hard work. Just follow my lead. And I think that's what you need from your. I find Owen Farrell quite jarring, especially when he's captain. I think he just has a. I'm not saying he has a bad attitude. It just seems like he has a bad attitude. And I don't. He might be captain, but I just think going for someone like James Ryan, who's the kind of person you want to follow into battle. For me, and. But off the field, it has to be Alan Wynne-Jones. It literally has to be Alan Wynne-Jones. I just don't think at 36, I think that's how old he will be at the Lions tour. I think 36, or just knocking on 37. I think it's more Skulkbrit's kind of role in the back room, motivating the guys. Because those midweek games are hard, and the training is hard. So you need someone there you also want to follow into battle. But for me, captain has to be James Ryan.
Yeah, just on James Ryan, just quickly to jump in. Your captain should always be someone who looks like they're probably first choice in the team.
Yes.
Someone who's world class in their position, someone who's first choice in the team. And what we've just discussed is a lot about partnerships and makeup. And you could almost argue in certain positions that other players could fill those roles depending on strategy. But he's one guy you look at and you go, well, the lock pairings will be Itoje and it will be Ryan, right? Without a doubt. So to me, he automatically commands it as well, just from the fact that he is one of those top players.
Exactly. I'd also, I know this might sound a little crazy, I even swing the idea of Itoje being captain for one or two of maybe the smaller games, as I think he's also, as you said, he's one of the players which is pretty consistent. He'll be there and he'll play. So yeah, I agree with you. James Ryan makes sense for the big games, and it'd be interesting to see how it goes forward. But I think they both are pretty much one of the few positions. If I look at our selections for this, we all agree in that area pretty much. It's the only one we do agree on, really.
Yep, and just on the tour captain as well. What a farewell for one of the great men.
Yeah.
Alan Wynne-Jones.
That's going to be amazing. That'll be amazing.
World Cup, but
yeah. No, that'll be quite a way to end it, and it'll probably be the end of his career there. But that's quite impressive. And I mean, it's a massively important tour, because if they can actually either hold it to a draw or win, the Irish Lions, it will be the first time that they've effectively haven't lost in all three of the major the touring range, which can be quite impressive.
Yeah, and I think also with Alan Wynne-Jones, if they were to take that angle, it just adds that story within the tour. Yeah. That players can get in and around, that the public can get in and around, and we've seen that with South Africa winning the World Cup, the power that can have. And that's one thing they're going to have to consider is how do you counteract, obviously, that motivation that will come from South Africa around the Springboks team. And the answer is you create your own stories.
Exactly. Yeah, you've got to make your own powerful stories.
Yeah, I did a chat with the 10-14 guys a long time ago, and we were talking about the importance of heroes, and why tours were so big in its day. Where a country used to go to another country and used to play 6-7 games against all the provincial sides, and then you'd play 3 big tests, and it was a really big moment. And a lot of players who were 11, 12, and who started watching international rugby probably watched Alan Wynne-Jones. This amazing 26-year-old lock who was just all over the place, aggressive. Now they were in the Lions side, and this is one of their heroes. And so that's why it's important to having someone with that kind of gravitas, that these guys grew up watching this person, and for me, that's what makes it so special.
No, for sure.
I agree. Well, we've covered all the main points, guys. So a lot covered, a lot more to cover over the coming years. It feels like we're a long way out, but I'm starting to get really excited myself. Hearing the news around the tour schedule, and now having a discussion with you guys about the makeup of the team, the strategy. It's I can't wait for this.
No, exactly. It's bubbling up. It's bubbling up. I was seeing all the articles, seeing the times. Now starting to plan and register yourself to get tickets. It's all happening, and I cannot wait.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, thank you both. Thank you very, very much for joining the chat. Really, really enjoyable chat, that one. So appreciate both of your time. Do you want to shout out each of your YouTube channels?
Unbiased, you can go first.
So you can obviously catch me on Unbiased Rugby. It is the most unbiased rugby show currently on YouTube. So if you read my about us, I'm completely unbiased unless the Springboks, the All Blacks, the Wallabies, the Argentinians, any Super Rugby side, maybe the Scottish are playing. Then I'm unbiased. But if it's any one of those other teams, then maybe I'm not. So just give me a shout. It's a little bit slow at the moment because we're all waiting for Super Rugby and Six Nations and everything. But please, I like having friendly banter and people just coming, tell me I'm talking rubbish. That's what it's all about. But thanks for having me, Zach.
Yeah. Thursday shows, eh? For you.
Actually, I've taken some time off. I think it's time to spend some time with the family and things. And so I think Christmas is going to be a rugby-free Christmas, maybe.
No, awesome. So on my side, I've obviously run Modern Bok Rugby, and you can catch me on YouTube. I will be bringing out some more conversations around the sevens. I'm going to the Cape Town Sevens, so you guys can catch that on my channel. I will also be doing and I'm starting to do some rugby gaming. So just talking about the new rugby game coming out from Rugby Challenge 4 and also Rugby 20. So catch that on my channel. But yeah, follow on. I think the sevens is going to be great as a nice little appetizer before Super Rugby next year. And yeah, thank you very much for having me on your channel. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you both again. It was a really enjoyable chat. As I say, so much more to cover. I'm sure we'll get to it over the next couple of years. And let's talk again soon. Thank you both.
Thank you.
See you guys.
Cheers.